Sign up for a year and pay less than 71 pesos per month. Visit tmt.ph/digital to get your free 30 days of the Manila Times Digital Edition. Sign up for a year and pay less than 71 pesos per month. Visit tmt.ph/digital to get your free 30 days of the Manila Times Digital Edition.
Our opening prayer.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Dearest God, our loving Lord, to you we direct our praise and prayer as Creator of the world, as Giver of life. More than 400 years ago, upon Las Islas de Filipinas, our beloved country, it pleased you to establish Colegio de San Juan de Letran as haven for the poor, as seedbed of saints, as cradle of heroes, as school dedicated to the teaching of truth and the learning of life. Even beyond our jubilee, bind us to our oath as your knights, without fear in the face of enemies, brave and upright in the love of God, always truthful, even unto death, defenders of the helpless, doers of good. May the blessings you shall bestow upon us lead us to serve your people and return to you in thanks eternal. Through the pleas of Mary, in the name of Jesus. Arriba. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Please remain standing for the Philippine National Anthem.
Bayang magiliw, para sa silanganan, alam ng puso, sa dibdib mo'y buhay. Lupang hiniran, tuyak ka ng pag-ibig, sa
seated.
Good day. Thank you for joining us on the Colegio de San Juan de Letran and the Manila Times 5th Annual Economic and Political Briefing, titled Arriba Economia y Politica, Gradual Rising and Approval. My name is Dafort Villaseran, the Manila Times or TMT editor. I'm also your co-host for today, and co-hosting with me is Letran's very own faculty and coordinator for the College of Education, Joy Chavez.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for being with us today for this economic forum. And good morning to my partner, The Fort. It's also my pleasure to co-hosting with you today.
And thank you for everyone for taking time out. It was explained to me that you've had a special schedule for today, so I hope we were able to make this all worth your while and for the time spent with we all have together.
Yes, that is correct.
So it's a pleasure to share the stage with you, Joy. Do you host activities such as this often in Letran?
To answer your question, yes, I have hosted and I have been hosting many activities for Letran since 2006. And for Economic Forum, since its launch in 2018, I have been hosting this event. So, but you know what, The Fort? I am proud to say that Letran has a roster or a new breed of equally talented hosts from the roster of our faculty members coming from the different colleges in Letran. So hopefully for the next Economic Forum, Dean EJ, we are going to have a new voice and face.
Well, that's something to look forward to also. And anyway, thank you for braving the stage with me today at this SC auditorium. I was wondering though, for those who are unfamiliar with the traditions of Letran, what does SC stand for?
Okay, so The Fort is like a student asking a question to his teacher. Well, The Fort, no? SC Auditorium or SC, the acronym means Student Center. This building, and also for the knowledge of our first-year students, this building named St. Albert the Great Building is also called Student Center Building. Why? Because it hosts student facilities such as the Department of Student Affairs Office, also the Letran Student Council Office, and the Lands Publication Office, and of course, this auditorium. That's why it is called SC Auditorium. I hope I was able to satisfy your curiosity.
Yes, very thorough. Well, I'm sure that this historical auditorium has been host to countless illustrious alumni, as well as a lot of speakers that have graced the stage.
Yes, The Fort. That is precisely why today we have invited luminaries with particular expertise in those fields. As keynote speakers, we have for business, Eufrosino Bernabe Jr., Assistant Secretary for the Fiscal Policy and Monitoring Group at the Department of Finance. For economics, we have Ruben Pascual, Secretary General of the Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry.
And speaking of Letran alumni, for politics, we have the Manila Times Chairman Emeritus Dante Arevalo-Ang Sr., or as we fondly call him at the Times, DA. So we fondly look forward to hearing the keynote speeches of DA.
Well, we fondly look forward indeed not to hearing the keynote speeches of DA, as you educated me on that.
And also June and Mr.
Yes,
Pascual.
Assistant Secretary Bernabe and Secretary General Pascual later, after the welcome remarks from our very own Dean of the Letran Graduate School. Let's give a round of applause for Associate Professor Emmanuel Lopez, PhD.
Thank you very much for that very warm introduction. I hope by now you are well aware of the fact that the GDP growth rate was 7.6% in the year 2022. What's the implication of that to economic growth of the Philippine Plan of Economic Growth? Its effect to the grassroots level, its effect to political stability, and the overall plan of the Philippine economy. Now, these and a host of other things are going to be settled today by our distinguished guest speakers. In the meantime, I would like to welcome you to this particular forum. Today marks the fifth year that we are conducting this annual economic and political forum. Now, in cooperation with the Manila Times, it is an event that started out in 2018 as an ordinary lecture hour without any fanfare and exclusively held for the benefit of informing the employees, particularly the faculty, of what is at stake as far as the economic future is concerned. Then Padre Rector saw the light at the end of the tunnel and saw the relevance in the program, and he suggested that we conduct it annually and spread it out outside of Letran as the Colegio's way of contributing to the awareness of the people regarding the economic and political front. And the rest is history. Today, as we look forward to the holding of the Fifth Economic Forum, we invite you and we welcome you, all the participants, both here present and virtually, to sit back and relax as we inform you through our guest resource persons on what is at stake as far as economic future is concerned. Likewise, we are hoping that Letran Graduate School, as an institution of higher learning, will make this event a yearly tradition, as it creates an informed society, which is Letran's way of contributing to the economic and political awareness, especially the faculty members. So sit back and relax and enjoy the rest of the program. Good morning and thank you very much.
Thank you, Dean Lopez, for the warm welcome remarks. Joy, have you had the pleasure of working with the dean, the head of the graduate school before?
Oh, the answer is definitely yes. As I've mentioned earlier, I have been hosting for the Economic Forum for 5 years now. Pre-pandemic, during pandemic, we had it virtually, and now in the now normal. And because of that, I had the privilege of listening to the experts in business and in politics.
Well, Joy, I've also had the privilege of working in other fora with the next distinguished gentleman, which will be giving the opening remarks, and he will be for some he's known as a journalist, business and politics talk show host, and a masterful mentor. And for some, they also know him as a formidable golfer. So if I may welcome the Manila Times Chairman and Chief Executive Officer, Dante Francis Ang II, whom we fondly call Circling.
Thank you for that introduction. Reverend Father Clarence Victor Marquez, Rector and President of Letran, Assistant Secretary Ofresinio Bernabe Jr. of the Department of Finance, Secretary General Ruben Pascual of the Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Dr. Cristina Castro Cabral, the Vice President for Academic Affairs, and of course Dr. E.J. Lopez, my good friend and Dean of the Graduate School, distinguished guests present here and those watching this event on live stream. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Today's briefing comes just days after the government released the 2022 GDP report, which, as most of you have heard, exceeded forecasts. While we welcomed the strong GDP rebound last year, many of you are probably here today for a fuller, perhaps more in-depth assessment of the economic and political landscape, as well as an outlook for this year. The lingering sense of uncertainty may be attributed to the fact that GDP, or gross domestic product, is, as we wrote in an editorial over the weekend, is only one of the many indicators used to evaluate the economy. Certainly, a high GDP figure is something to feel good about. It is better than a lower figure or even a negative one. GDP, however, does not say anything about the quality of growth, particularly about income disparity. The latest GDP figure also suggests that the poor did not fare so well last year. Agriculture only grew 0.5%, and over the past years, it has been underperforming, contributing only about 10% to GDP. Fisheries and forestry contracted as well, And as many of you heard from the news, these developments have implications on all consumers like you and me. Despite the challenges, most people we have interviewed feel optimistic about the future of the Philippines. The 7th-month-old Marcos government has a new Philippine development plan in place. And if you have seen today's newspaper, President Marcos just approved the recovery roadmap yesterday. I believe Asek Bernabe and our distinguished guests were there for the EO signing. A notable aim of the economic team is to reduce poverty incidence to a single digit by 2028. There are, as they say, a lot of irons in the fire. But for the strong growth to continue in the Philippines, it will need to buck the global trend. The economic outlook for the world is a cause for concern. A recession threatens the United States and Europe, in no small part because of the war in Ukraine against Russia. With fighting likely to intensify this year, hopes of an economic relief from its fallout are faint. China, which is ascending as the world's largest economy, is increasingly important to the Philippine economy, might be sluggish this year as it recovers from its draconian measures to contain COVID-19. A poll of economists predict that it will only grow 4.9% this year. The Philippines is predicted to do better in terms of GDP, growing by 6%, between 6% and 7%. But remember that the forecast was downgraded, mainly because of external headwinds. The upper bound of the original forecast was 8%. But as mentioned earlier, GDP is only part of the total economic picture. To fill in the gaps, Letran, in cooperation with our newspaper, has invited some experts to offer their outlook. Like you, we are here to listen rather than to offer our views, and so we should get the program started. But before we do, let me just say that the Manila Times is delighted to be working with Letran, to be our partner. For sentimental reasons, my father, who will be speaking on the political landscape this morning, is a graduate of your distinguished school. I myself am taking my doctorate in this program, and as the dean convincingly told me, gawin mo ito, hindi kita ipapasa. But with all seriousness, I'd like to thank our sponsors who made this event possible today: Global Ferronickel Holdings Incorporated, Hungary Workhorse, and ICTI, or International Container Terminal Services Incorporated. And of course, thank you to the Manila Times team who made this event possible. We hope that this will be the beginning of more collaborations with Letran and a stronger partnership that will help build a better and stronger country. Thank you, and may you all have a productive day.
Thank you, Sir Klink, for the opening remarks and for officially opening Arriba Economia y Politica, Gradual Rising and Approval. Thank you also, as mentioned by Sir Klink, our special partners, a Hungry Workhorse, as well as Global Ferronickel Holdings Incorporated, and ICTS, or International Container Terminal Services Incorporated. Joy, who else would we like to thank in terms of our organizational partners?
Okay, the fourth, we have a long list. So we'd like to express our gratitude to the British Chamber of Commerce of the Philippines, the French Chamber of Commerce and Industry in the Philippines, the Cebu Chamber of Commerce and Industry, the Chamber of Real Estate and Builders Associations, or GREBA, the Davao City Chamber of Commerce and Industry, or DCCCII, the Financial Executive Institute of the Philippines, or FINEX, the Italian Chamber of Commerce in the Philippines Incorporated, or ICCPI, the Islamic Dawah Council of the Philippines, or IDCP, the Spanish Chamber of Commerce in the Philippines, or La Camara, the Management Association of the Philippines, or MAP, the Nordic Chamber of Commerce of the Philippines, the Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry, or PCCI, the Voice of Business, the PCCI NCR, the Philippine Center for Islam and Democracy, and She Talks Peace. And of course, special thanks go out to our media partner, the Manila Times TV.
Now that's a mouthful there. Congratulations on being able to...
I practiced that.
Truly, we are thankful to our special and organization partners for helping make today possible. And with that, we now have approval to introduce our first keynote speaker.
I have the privilege.
Ladies first.
Yes, okay. The work of our first keynote speaker encompasses fiscal policy and planning initiatives with focus on tax reform, revenue forecasting, and fiscal programming. He briefs credit rating agencies, international fund managers, and investment bankers on development in the fiscal sector and the tax reform package. A fiscal, monetary, and financial professional with over 22 years of experience. He holds a Master of Science in Financial Engineering from the University of Illinois, a certified public accountant. He earned his accountancy degree from San Beda College. Further, he has a history of working in macro-financial and economic policy research, as well as in developing financial models at the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, at the Southeast Asian Central Bank's Research and Training Center, and at CICIP, Gores, and Velayo. With pleasure, I give you Department of Finance Fiscal Policy and Monitoring Group Assistant Secretary Eufrosino Bernabe Jr.
I think the Assistant Secretary prefers to be called June.
Okay, June. I'll take note of that. Sir June.
Okay, good morning everyone. Thank you very much, Mr. Defort and Ms. Joy. Good morning to the Manila Times executive. Good morning, President Ang. Good morning, Dean, and good morning, Secretary General. Good morning, Rector. And good morning to the Colegio de San Juan de Letran community and distinguished guests. Thank you for inviting the Department of Finance to speak in today's forum. I am glad that the organizers is finally able to host their flagship program physically once again. The 5th annual economic and political briefing is a timely one, and I'm more than glad to share with you where our economy stands and what our plans are for the next 6 years. Can you help? Please flash. Okay, thank you. The high domestic demand is mainly due to private consumption. That is partly driven by bright labor market. Unemployment rate slid down to 4.2% in November, the lowest recorded since April 2005. The labor force participation improved to 67.5%, which is a 2.2 million increase from a year ago. The unemployment rate also decreased to 14% from 16% in the same month in 2021. These positive developments tells us that the Philippines is recovering well, and we anticipate that the labor market will continue fueling domestic demand. This is an impressive feat considering that we are facing unprecedented challenges in the global market, ranging from monetary tightening and high inflation owing to soaring world oil prices and supply chain issues. Next slide, please. However, holiday spending and supply constraints continue to drive inflation to 8.1% in December 2022, from 8% in the previous month, breaching the government's target full-year assumption to 5.8%. Next slide, please. The main drivers of inflation were transport, higher fuel prices, and increased food and commodity prices, which were exacerbated by the recent typhoons. This time, demand-side pressures contributed to the upward movement of inflation following increased domestic activity. Equally important are the medium-term and long-term efforts to increase productivity and modernize agriculture as laid out in the recently approved Philippine Development Plan 2023-2028. The pandemic and war in Ukraine has taught us the importance of investing in more resilient production, infrastructure, and health systems. Policies that shifts from COVID-19 support to promoting structural transformation is paramount. In 2021, our foreign direct investments reached an all-time high of $12 billion US. And from January to October 2022, foreign direct investments amounted to $7.6 billion US. All these numbers indicate confidence in the Philippines' long-term economic prospects. Our gross international reserves as of December 2022 are at $96 billion US. This gives us more than enough liquidity buffer to more than 7 months worth of imports. Moreover, it also more than 5 times the country's short-term external debt. This shows that the Philippines' strength against external risk. Can you go back to the, at least, move forward, please? Move forward, please, sorry. And move forward? Okay. Next slide, please. Okay. I think you're on the right chart. Okay. The Philippines' gross international reserves remain well above the International Monetary Fund's reserve adequacy metric. So since the global financial crisis, the ratio of the GIR relative to this metric has been relatively higher compared to selected Asian economies and emerging markets. Having adequate reserves could reduce the likelihood of a BOP crisis, help preserve economic and financial stability against pressures on the exchange rates, and creates fiscal space for the economy. Next slide, please. So our latest revenue collections also reflect higher economic activity and more effective tax administrations by the Bureau of Internal Revenue and Bureau of Customs. Cumulative revenue collections for January to November of the year amounted to 3.3 trillion pesos. That's 18% higher compared to revenues in 2021. The collections for the first 11 months have already surpassed pre-pandemic levels, and we expect revenue collection to surpass this year's collection target. Next slide, please. So the economic team is committed to implementing a medium-term fiscal framework as one of the priorities of the President mentioned during his State of the Nation address. This serves our blueprint to reduce fiscal deficit, promote fiscal sustainability, and enable robust economic growth. The framework will be our game plan for the next 6 years, with due recognition of fiscal risk. The framework seeks to attain short-term macro-fiscal stability while remaining supportive of the country's economic recovery. It also serves our roadmap for developing the medium-term national government expenditure program. Among the targets set under the framework is for the economy to grow 6.5% to 7.5% in 2023. It also aims to create more quality jobs and reduce poverty incidence by steering the economy back to its growth path in the near term and sustaining inclusive and resilient growth over the medium term. Both the House of Representatives and the Senate have adopted a resolution supporting the framework. The medium-term program will be reviewed and updated after 3 years in 2025. So our fiscal consolidation strategy will bring down our debt to GDP ratio from 63.5% to less than 60% by 2025. It will also cut our deficit to GDP ratio from current 6.4% to 3%. And this implies that we do not have to borrow as much as we did during the crisis. At the same time, we will continue to boost domestic economic activity with our massive infrastructure investments to 5 to 6% of GDP annually. Next slide, please. The framework also proposes measures that will improve tax administration, enhance the fairness and efficiency of our tax system, and promote environmental sustainability to address climate change. In addition, we will work for the passage of the remaining tax reform packages of the Duterte administration. Next slide, please. On November 14, 2022, the House of Representatives have improved on third and final reading the following priority measures. One is the Package 4, or the Passive Income and Financial Intermediary Taxation Act, the VAT on digital service providers, and excise tax on single-use tax. Next slide, please. And on tax administration, the Bureau of Internal Revenue and the Bureau of Customs have directed to fast-track the digitalization of their operations to boost our tax effort, enhance tax administration, and eliminate discretion. These efforts, alongside higher economic activity, have already resulted in above-target revenue collections. Next slide, please. So now, we need the business community to sustain our hard-earned efforts and accelerate the country's recovery and growth. Therefore, we have increased the transparency and accountability of public-private partnerships by addressing stakeholder concerns to the recently revised implementing rules and regulations of the Build, Operate, Transfer Law. Through this, we will tap into private capital to maintain high infrastructure spending despite budgetary constraints. Next slide, please. So furthermore, we expect a robust growth outlook supported by the investment-ready policy environment, strengthened by the calibrated reopening of the economy, and shaped by the historic enactment of game-changing structural reforms. For one, the Corporate Recovery and Tax Incentives for Enterprises Act, or CREATE, is the largest fiscal stimulus for businesses to date. The CREATE law significantly cut the corporate income tax from 30% to 20% for domestic, small, and medium enterprises, and to 25% for all other corporations, including foreign enterprises. Through the Strategic Investment Priority Plan, CREATE incentivizes firms to be more regionally competitive, supportive of Fourth Industrial Revolution, and attractive to foreign capital infusion. Next slide, please. So meanwhile, the amendments to the Public Service Act, Retail Trade Liberalization Act, and Foreign Investment Act have made our economy more open than ever before. This will allow foreign investors to participate in previously protected sectors such as telco, toll roads, and shipping. Increased investments allow the transfer of new technologies and ideas, promote healthy competition, and create more high-quality jobs for the Filipino people. We have also opened up the renewable energy sector to full foreign ownership. We are pursuing energy transition and development programs at achieving a clean, affordable, and secure mix of energy sources. A more liberalized energy sector will not only accelerate our energy transition, but will also create more green jobs, a goal that we have set in the Marcos administration's socio-economic agenda. Next slide, please. And our young, tech-savvy, globally competitive workforce shall be our engines of growth. Therefore, we will champion them by making human capital development and education focus on the 21st century skills a top priority of our agenda. We remain committed to investing in our people's skills and overall welfare to further boost the competitiveness of the Filipino talent. And lastly, our resolve to support long-term growth and fiscal sustainability is firmly grounded on a credible policy framework. The President has already approved the Philippine Development Plan 2023 to 2028, which is also aligned with our medium-term fiscal framework. And I guess there will be much work ahead, but the government looks forward to your full support as we propel the Philippines to a bright economic future. And I'll be happy to reply to your questions or clarifications later on. Thank you very much and good day.
Thank you, Assistant Secretary June, for providing insight on the economic aspect of our country. We'll be asking you to join us again after our second speaker for the open forum portion of our program. For now, the fourth, would you like to introduce our second speaker?
Yes, that will be my joy to do so, Joy.
Wow, thank you.
Well, aside from being the founder of the company that bears his initials, our next speaker of RJP Consulting has also been a diplomat, a legislative chief of staff, and business executive. Now, after he got his business degree from the University of the Philippines, he went on to work with Business Day, where he has been recognized as the best agriculture reporter in the country. He has provided services for the World Bank, the Australian Agency for International Development, the Canadian International Development Agency, and USAID, or the United States Agency for International Development. He has been tapped by the Departments of Budget and Management, the Department of Agriculture, Department of Trade and Industry, Transportation and Communication, and the Department of Agrarian Reform. He has also been a consultant to corporations in the fields of agribusiness, power, and shipping, steel and information technology, among others. And he has done work for socio-civic groups such as the Philippine Exporters Confederation Incorporated and the Employers Confederation of the Philippines. Ladies and gents, I give you Ruben Pascual, Secretary General of the Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry.
Maraming salamat, Joy. Maraming salamat, The Fourth. Magandang umaga po, Reverend Rector Marquez. Binabati ko rin si Mr. Clink Ang, the CEO of Manila Times, and the Dean of the Graduate School of Letran, E.J. Lopez. Is that correct? And then, of course, the Assistant Secretary of the Department of Finance, June Bernabe. If you don't mind ako, magtatagalog ako, Tagalog at Filipino, para mas mabuting makapag-relate. Lalo na mga estudyante nandito, I'd like this to be a very informal dialogue. I look forward to the questions and answers later on. I am here going to do a non-traditional presentation, not the usual presentations that the Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry does, or the government. But my objective today is to tease a little. You know, many of the things that I will say today is consistent with what was just reported by ASEC June Bernabe. The future looks bright for the Philippines, but there is work to be done, especially in terms of uniting behind a vision for how our country is going to move forward. I will be showing only a few slides, and pasensya na po sa nagpo-present, sa nagpe-prepare. I will be jumping from slide to slide that nagkaiba-iba. First slides I'd like to show is that it is true that we are in a good growth trajectory. Let me show the first slide, please. No, not forward. Forward pa. Yan. So before the pandemic, we were already hitting 5, 6, 7% growth rate. Tapos, then in 2020, biglang bagsak yan. That is not only unique to the Philippines. That is true for all countries. Pero yung ang binagsak ng ekonomiya natin, medyo mas malaki. That's another issue of debate on how the Philippines decided to approach its pandemic, our responses. For the business sector, it was very painful because the government chose the path of extreme lockdowns, which limited the mobility of our employees and businesses and the delivery of goods. So medyo masakit. Especially in business in the Philippines, 99% of the businesses in the country are small enterprises. So sa ganitong kahirapan, this 99% provides the employment for 99% of the Filipinos. Dito po hirap, hindi yung malalaking kumpanya nagpro-provide na employment. It is more the micro and small enterprises. So what happened after the pandemic? The next 2 years, next slide please. Next slide. Next one. Okay, so next 2 slides, clearly there was a rebound. In fact, this year, I don't know, ASEC June, we are hitting the highest growth rates ever. We just hit the last quarter, 7.2%. So, pag iniisip mo yung official records of growth, pag tinignan mo, everything looks well. But in the minds of many Filipinos, hindi tayo happy because we cannot eat those figures. We look for our eggs, cheap eggs. We look for our onions, the highest, the most expensive in the world. We look for salt. Pati asin hinahanap na natin. So there is a lot of questions, especially in the area of agriculture. But I'm not here to talk about all of those things. I'd like to focus this morning more on 2 issues that I believe we have to embrace fully and understand. And this is the areas where we need to work and take advantage of. If the Philippines is to rise into a middle class or even a first class country in the world. The belief that the Philippines will be joining the league of middle class or even first class countries is already established. Next slide, please. Okay. The Hong Kong Shanghai Bank has already predicted that the Philippines was going to be the number 16 country or economy in the world. Number 16 po. Another international institution, Capital Economics, projected the Philippines to hit number 18. And these are all going to happen by 2050. At the Philippine Chamber of Commerce, for this year's Philippine Business Congress, we are choosing a theme called Vision 2050, towards a first-class economy. So this is under debate in PCCI. This is not official. But our organizers for this year wants to look at a very, very high target of how the Philippines is going to make it in 2050. There is a lot of plans. Only yesterday, they finalized the Philippine Development Plan, and that's a rolling 5-year plan. We have Ambition 2040, where the plan designed by NEDA says that by 2040, there will be no poor in the Philippines. or a very strong middle-class country. So let me go to the reasons for the future. Why we believe there is really a lot of possibility that we will succeed in the future. Can you go back to the first slide, please? The Philippines enjoys a very unique reputation in the world for several reasons. Number one, we are number one in worldwide use of social media. Okay? So, kasama po kayo dyan kung bakit ganito yung ng number one na yata sa Pilipinas, hindi sa social media, is no longer Facebook, pero TikTok. Sino ang TikTok user sa inyo? So I'm doon sa ingay, alam ko TikTok na, di ba? So later on, ang TikTok, hindi lang ito para sa mga pag nagpo-post kayo ng mga sayaw nyo, pero now it is a marketplace at marami ng mga forum sa TikTok nangyayari. The Philippines is also the largest consumer market in ASEAN. In population, we are number 2 to Indonesia. But it is projected, but the Philippines will be the number 12. It is already the number 12 populous country in the world. 3, I will discuss this further, the high English proficiency level in the Philippines. We are also known for having the smallest gender gap in Asia. Anong ibig sabihin nito? Halos pantay yung lalaki at babae sa Pilipinas. The other one is the services. I will discuss this in the next few slides. It is the engine for economic growth. 6, exports. We are known mainly for electronic exports. 7, a very special achievement of the country. We are number 1 provider of seafarers in the world. And we have high cash flow. We have high cash flow mainly because of the remittances of our fellow overseas Filipino workers. Next slide, please. Can you go to the slide of the prospects for the future up to 2050? Okay. In 2050, there will be 148 million Filipinos. So in other words, in the next Philippine Business Conference, we would like the country, not only government, to already start thinking that there will be 148 million Filipinos in 27 years. And it will require 100 new cities to accommodate our population. The growth rates projected already by the World Bank, by the Asian Development Bank for the Philippines is 6.7 to 7.7% growth rate. But is this enough to accommodate the 148 million Filipinos? Okay. If you ask government right now, one of the quick answers of government is they will be able, it is the plan for infrastructure. During the Duterte administration, they boasted the build program and started doing bridges, roads, airports, etc. Dito, under the Marcos administration, it is now called Build More. Hilig natin sa acronym, BBM kasi. So tandaan niyo yan, tutuloy yung build with build more. On fiscal policy, ASEC June already talked about the game-changing laws like CREATE, revamping the incentive system so that we attract investments to the country, the retail liberalization law, there's a strategic investments plan, and of course, there's a lot of work on the ease of doing business. But let me now go to the two reasons why I believe we can really leap forward. Number one, the Philippines, and you all know this, we have rich and untapped natural resources. Let you enumerate some numbers. The country is the 5th most mineralized country in the world. 3rd in gold, 4th in copper, 5th in nickel, 6th in chromite. The problem, though, is we export these minerals and then import the finished products. It is about time here in this country we have to start using our own mineral resources and transform them into products instead of importing them. For instance, green metals such as nickel, copper, and cobalt are for domestic industries such as EV battery manufacturing and support for mining harnesses. Sa copper lang, we have 1.1 billion metric tons of copper reserves. That's the biggest in the world. Pero in our Pasar plant, we import copper coming from Peru. So we don't process our minerals into higher value-added nickel production into sulfate and produce lithium-ion batteries. In the Philippines, there is a disturbing debate about mining. In other countries, South Africa, Canada, Australia, succeeded, we have more mineral resources than these 3 countries. They were able to develop their countries because they embraced the mining sector. In the Philippines, we still keep on debating about its destructive impact on the environment when there are ways on how to mine resources responsibly. If we are able to do and protect our people from these resources, we can use a lot of this income to develop our country. Another simple natural resource we have is our coastline. We have the longest coastline in the world. Imagine that the Philippines is an archipelagic country, and we import 93% of our salt. Asin po, kinakain nyo, imported po yan. Except for the provinces. Nakakalungkot yan. Kaya nyong gumawa ng asin, tabing dagat, punta dito sa pan, asin na po. Pero 93% of our salt is important. Bamboo, kawayan. Alam natin lahat, this is now $100 billion industry all over the world. We haven't even solved planting of bamboo. So right now, BCCI is working with many of the investors already to develop thousands of hectares of bamboo plantations. We have discussed with DANR, and there we will start developing bamboo processing plants all over the country. Simpleng kawayan lang po ito. Hindi po natin may tanim. Okay. The second, I want to discuss that outside of using and tapping our natural resources, this is the one that can really propel us to a high growth rate. I'm talking about the demographic sweet spot of the Philippines. Today, the median age of Filipinos is 24.1 years. Who is 24 years and above here? Pakitaas yung kamay niya. Yung mga nasa harap lang, all of you are not even in the median. 24 years. Our population is between 15 years and 64 years. That is the working age of employees. We have 71.3 million, making up 64.22 of our population. Kaya ho, pag eleksyon, ang nagdidesisyon nito, kayo pong mga kabataan. Kaya I wanted to address you because the question now is before you. Kayo ang mag-iisip, ang magdi-decide para sa bayan natin. We produce 800,000 graduates every year. 800,000. Hinahanapan natin ng trabaho lahat yan. 90% ng ka-graduate natin may bachelor's degree. 29% niyan in business administration, 21% in education science, another 20% in engineering and IT. Employment now has shifted to the industrial and service sector from agriculture. The biggest addition to the workforce are those who are employed by the business process outsourcing, which already contributes 61% of our GDP. So pag tiningnan mo yung mga slides, this is where our students graduate. Pre-bachelor, 4%, bachelor's degree, 90%. And then doctorate, etc. Next slide, please. So this is where the graduates go to. Business administration and related. Sino ho dito ang business administration? The students. Education science and teacher training. Anong course kayo? Engineering and technology. Can you raise your hands? Nag-aaral ba ho kayo? Elementary pa kayo? Ha? IT-related disciplines. Aba, talagang pala elementary nandito. Medical and allied. So, yan po. This is a question that you will... Okay. I want to discuss two areas where Filipinos excel. This is about our Filipino seafarers. Okay. Bigyan ko kayo ng kwento. This is actually in the 70s na kwento. It was no accident that the foreign ships oilers, cruise ships, etc., are manned mostly by Filipinos. In the 70s, there was a conscious decision by government and the private sector that we will start manning our ships. Somebody started, I am not sure who, but I know it's a combination of the Department of Labor and the private sector, I think the magsaysay. When they decided we want to be number one in seafaring. In other words, there was a unity in vision. We can do this. And everything else happened. Schools were developed, incentives were given, and everything else. So, hanggang ngayon, umabot at its highest peak, about 500,000 Filipinos were working as seafarers. Another area where Filipinos are extending now is the Filipino health workers going global. Ngayon po, in many of the schools, in many hospitals, employers are already funding. Employers themselves are funding the scholarships of nurses. Hindi pa graduate, tinatanggap na nila at lahat. Okay, so two things. As ASEC June said earlier, unless we invest in our young population, of skilling and upskilling everything, you cannot expect that we will be happy with 5% growth rates, etc. But if we want to move to the higher league of nations, we need 10 to 15% growth rates, and that can be achieved if the investments are done with the youth, and of course, we properly use our natural resources to produce higher value products. I'd like to discuss that further as we move to our dialogue later. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Secretary General Pascual, for giving us insights on the business aspect of our country. And surely we'll have questions for you regarding the matter. Secretary General Pascual, may we invite you to please remain on stage as we recall the representative of the Department of Finance.
Assistant Secretary June, may we invite you to come up on stage, please. We'll proceed to the open forum portion of our program.
By the way, the fourth, alongside with Father Rector, also joining us today in this forum is Letran's Vice President for Financial Affairs, Reverend Father Raymond
Welcome.
Jose O.P. So I think we're good for our first open forum.
Yes, we also call on Hungry Workhorse founder and Chief Executive Officer, Reynaldo Ray Lugto Jr., to join us on stage as moderator for our open forum. Maybe we can give the other mic if it's not. Oh, there.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Good morning. Yeah, all right. Well, we're all glad to hear the economic growth. Imagine 7.6, exceeding targets. So let's give our country a big hand, everyone. Pero despite that, so ASIC June, Mr. Pascual, so we still have problems. We still have problems, and I call this an omelette of a problem. When I cook omelette, my favorite is omelette. So, mahal yung itlog, asin, sibuyas, Tapos minsan naglalagay ako ng bawang, So, ASIC June, Now, you said earlier in your report that no, the inflation is primarily demand-driven. Demand-driven. Kanina, nag-uusap kami ni Asik Jun. No? So, totoo ba tong revenge spending? No? Totoo ba to? No? Revenge. Are we spending because we were confined to our homes? No? So, ngayon, we went out to spend. So, Asik Jun, what's your forecast? No? Unang-una, totoo ba tong revenge spending? Pangalawang question is, kailan ito babagal para naman bumaba ang mga presyo ng mga produkto? Asik Jun.
Maraming salamat, Ray. And good morning again. No? So sa unang tanong, sa 2023, ang inaasahan namin ang magiging problema or at least issue for the year is inflation tsaka growth. But ang inaasahan namin is mag-continue yung revenge spending dahil nag-open na economy. At sana, kayo mga kabataan, alam ko, mahilig kayo mamasyal, di ba? Out of town or out of the country. Ang hilig sana namin, nakausap namin last time, yung kunyari, Philippine-American Business Chamber from Hawaii. Ang tanong nila sa akin, parehas, paano kami makakatulong sa Pilipinas ngayon? Ang sabi ko, pagpunta nyo lang dito sa Pilipinas at imbitahan nyo mga kaibigan nyo, ang buong pamilya nyo, na bumisita ulit sa Pilipinas, makakatulong kayo sa Pilipinas. So, kayo mga kabataan, alam ko mahilig kayo mamasyal. Sana bago kayo pumunta sa Japan, o sa Korea, o sa ibang bansa, dito muna kayo mamasyal. Dito kayo gumastos at alam ko, makakatulong yan sa ekonomiya ng Pilipinas. Thank you.
Alright. So, tuloy. So, Asik Jun, tutuloy pa rin ang revenge spending in the coming years. Tama ba?
Sana pag-open ng ekonomiya, yan ang inaasahan namin, consumer demand. Pero at least, mag-spend kayo ng kanyang mga pera dito sa Pilipinas at makakatulong ng gusto sa ekonomiya.
Alright, so yes, we spend here in our domestic economy. No? So thank you, Asik Jun. Now, punta tayo kay Mr. Pascual. No? I like your presentation, sir. No? So my question is, paano yesterday, there was a report by Secretary Duterte of Education. No? Now, ang alam ko, ang report ni Secretary Duterte of Education, sabi niya, the K-12 curriculum aimed to equip Filipino senior high school graduates with globally competitive skills. It failed in its promise. Now, ang alam ko, ang PCCI previously, ang sinabi ng PCCI early in 2018, the graduates are not yet ready to work. No? Ito yung sinabi ng pahayag ng PCCI in previous years. So, Mr. Pascual, sa inyo, anong evaluation, assessment nyo? Is it really a failure in K-12? And anong prospect nyo? Anong kailangan baguhin dito?
Yung coordination ng private sector at saka gobyerno, napakahalaga dito. Kasi we want the students to be trained for the skills that are needed internationally. Hindi enough yung masaya tayo, BPO tayo, etc. We are in the lower tier of the skills here, dun sa BPO. We still really need to invest on our skills like data science, higher technical skills, yung IT architecture, etc. So I think institutions like Letran will be able to help out. If you are able to strengthen the education here. Hindi naman kailangan physical kayo umupo dito. Even virtually, ang daming matututunan, especially for the first world skills. So ito yung gusto kong buksan ng mata ng mga kabataan na tingnan. And we at PCCI, we provide opportunities for students to train in other companies para masanay sa trabahong magbabayad ng malaki.
So, ang curriculum ba, Sec. Gen. Pascual, kailangan baguhin towards the new world skills? Ganun ba yun na ating gustong mangyari?
Yes, talagang math science ang labanan sa labanan. Yun talaga yung kailangan ng pag-aaralan. But even in certain basic courses like in agriculture, napag-iwanan tayo rito. We used to be number 1 here. But even in agriculture, we've been left behind.
All right. So thank you, Sec. Gen. Pascual. Now we would like to open this floor to the audience, to the students. Ako narinig ko ang mga taga-Letran maraming inquisitive minds. So we now invite you to ask the questions. So you can use the microphone and identify yourself. Sir.
Good morning, Sir Lugto. Now, this question is addressed to both our speakers. No? It is a known fact that the GDP growth is 7.6%. And as you said, 70% of that is consumer-driven. Therefore, when you say that the GDP is consumer-driven, it means to say it is something not really stable. Because the more stable GDP is when investment is higher than consumer spending. Consumer-driven to, How do you think the government should address the fact that the consumer spending should be lower than the investment spending? The investment spending should be at least approximate to consumer spending. Kasi yung mga developing countries, laging mas mataas ang consumer spending kaysa investment spending. Ang long term dapat mas mataas yung investment spending so that it will be more or less productive in that regard, no? Sa atin, consumer driven, so it's something that is temporary and not really permanent. Because it's something that's stable, no? How do you encourage the consumer to invest, not really to spend?
Thank you, Dean, for that question. I think just to provide perspective, since we expect na global economy to slow down, our main armor now, our near term, is the consumer spending. Now, as I presented po earlier, the medium-term plan for the next 6 years is to improve on the infrastructure spending up to 5%. The 5% figure, kasi ngayon, parang less than 2% or max 2% of infrastructure. The 5% is a target because at least at that time, mababalance din natin yung inflation. We don't crowd out the private sector investment, and at the same time, the government will not contribute so much on inflation. I think the best now, I think what has happened in the current administration is that there's continuity. No, I think in my experience for the last 2 decades, kada palit ng administration, palit ng plan eh. For the first time in history, there's continuity. Kung ano man yung sinimulan ng past administration, Duterte administration, especially in infrastructure, doon sa mga na-pending na mga infrastructure, itutuloy ng current administration at dadagdagan pa. Because I think the Philippines will have to invest more infrastructure. Like the Dean said, no, mas maganda na mag-invest ngayon, lalo na umihina ang ekonomiya at mag-invest dito sa Pilipinas. Pangalawa po, I think nanggaling din po ako sa Bangko Sentral before my stint sa Department of Finance. In that organization, there's a conscious effort to educate the Filipinos on investments. Of course, there's a risk, but savings, I think, is robust in the Philippines compared to Asian countries. Meron po kaming study before na ang dami nagsasave sa Philippines. I think in the banking system alone, ang deposits is more than 11 trillion. Banking deposits. So ang daming Pilipino nagsasave. But some of it, no, ang ginagawa ng ibang kumpanya, nag-i-invest sa labas kasi mas maganda ekonomiya doon. Ang ginagawa naman ng investor sa labas, since nag-grow tayo, balik dito. Parang nagiging round-tripping an issue. So ngayon, merong program yung Bangko Sentral na invest in the Philippines. invest in the Philippines because we have a sound macroprudential or macroeconomic stability. And hindi lang naman kami nagsabi nun, but at least credit rating agencies. Gusto ko lang dagdagan yung sinabi ni General Ruben kanina na prior to the pandemic, I think 2019, naging part po ako, 2013 pa lang meron na tayong goal to be credit rate, investment grade, at least BBB. Na-achieve natin yun noong 2013. Noong 2019, isang credit rating agency is Japan Credit Rating Agencies. A-rated na tayo, negative A. We were close, the top 3, we were close to attaining a credit rating agency. Kaya lang nangyari yung pandemic eh. But at the same time, hindi niya tayo din-downgrade where all the countries were downgraded. Tayo lang, limited countries na retain yung credit rating. Imagine, 8 is like Singapore and Malaysia. So we're there actually before the pandemic. And hopefully, with the continued programs, we reach that credit A status.
So I well answered. Thank you. We have one more question. Go ahead, please.
Good morning po. This question is from the Director of Community Extension Department. The question is, we'd like to hear the government's plans for looking after our nation's natural resources, raw ingredients through to finished goods. Hope the speakers can enlighten us on this. So once again, I will repeat po the question. We'd like to hear the government's plans for looking after our nation's natural resources, raw ingredients through to finished goods. Hope the speakers can enlighten us on this. Thank you po.
Since the government is addressed to the government, first, yung infrastructure. I think ang plan is to connect the provinces through roads, to railway system, and investments in actually renewable energy. I think the Philippines is one of the highest in electricity costs. Nag-travel kami with the President last October in Indonesia and in New York. Isa sa mga tinitignan nila because mag-invest sa Philippines but high electricity costs. So now we're encouraging renewable energy para bumabayan ang cost natin at ma-encourage ng maraming investors dito sa Pilipinas.
Sec. Jen, anong insight niyo dyan?
Yeah, gusto ko i-address yung question ni Dean at saka dito about the second question. Yung consumer spending, panandali ang solusyon yan eh. I mean, saving grace ng sa Pilipinas yung consumer spending. Ang lakas natin mag-text, bumili ng telepono, etc. Yun ang bumubuhay sa atin. Mainly because may cash nga tayo dumadating from overseas Filipinos, etc. Pero what you're looking for is the stable source of growth. And the government is correct that the way to go is really improve our infrastructure. On infrastructure, let me address one main issue. Dalawa ang main saan kulang na kulang tayo. Number one is in power. We have the second most expensive power. Unless we really solve this kung paano natin pababain ito, mahihirapan tayong mag-compete. Pangalawa, yung connectivity. And this is an issue hindi nyo masyadong nararamdaman dito sa Metro Manila. But in all over the Philippines, kaya mahihirapan makapag-aral, lalo na during the pandemic, yung mga nasa probinsya. Kasi walang connection eh. Walang internet. Paano na lang ang gagawin? In other countries, governments spend for cabling the entire country. For instance, Korea. Ginastusan nila yung connectivity highway. Dito, inaasahan natin that Globe and Smart will be doing it for us. Hindi nila gagawin yan. Pag ginawa nila yung ganyan na sila ang maglalatag ng mga kable, makakabawas sa kikitain nila. So certain areas will have to be provided by government. Otherwise, the developments yung advantages will very be uneven. Only sa cities lang. So this is my challenge for this government to really solve that connectivity issue.
Maraming salamat sa mga sagot, Secretary General Pascual and Assistant Secretary Bernabe, June. And Ray, thank you very much also for the questions and from the questions that came from the audience. Unfortunately, we'll have to proceed with the awarding of the plaques. So, Joy?
Once again, thank you, gentlemen. And may we request our gentlemen to please remain on stage for the awarding of the plaque of appreciation. Thank you, June, for a very light yet very substantial open forum.
Yes.
At this point, may we call on Reverend Father Clarence Victor C. Marquez, OP, Letran Rector and President, Father Jose, Dean Lopez, and Sir Clink to join us on stage to personally hand over the plaques to our distinguished speakers and have photos taken for posterity.
Thanks, dear speakers, for gracing the stage with your presence, as well as for sharing your insights on business and the economy.
Once again, let's give a round of applause to our distinguished speakers. Thank you very much.
Thank you also, Father Marquez, Dean Lopez, and Sir Clink, for doing the honors of the awarding.
Now we'll move on to introducing our third and final keynote speaker before having the second and concluding open forum portion of our program. The fourth, care to the honors, age first before beauty.
Maybe smoothness before silkiness.
Yes, I agree.
But before I do, here's an announcement for those of you who are maybe checking your cell phones or wondering who's messaged you. If you could please scan this QR code and check out the Manila Times page, share and subscribe to be able to get premium content, select content from the Manila Times.
Okay, before you do that, the fourth, can I bring out the teacher in me?
Okay.
Okay, to our dear students, please observe proper decorum. Let us all sit properly as we brace for our third speaker.
Now, for our third speaker, some of you might be amazed to learn that he has spent several years of his youth in a monastery, and he has earned a journalism degree from the Lyceum of the Philippines, and then finishing at the top of his MBA class with a weighted general average of 96.4%. He is an alumnus of Colegio de San Juan de Letran, with a doctorate in business administration from the Pamantasan ng Lungsod ng Maynila. He also has certification from the University of Pennsylvania, USA on English for journalism. He has successfully handled public relations or PR for Gloria Macapagal Arroyo in the 1995 the general elections, as well as the 1998 presidential elections. He has served as a senior presidential advisor for PR from 2001 to 2003, and he has been a PR consultant for Iraq during the Iran-Iraq War and for Kuwait during the Gulf War when Iraq invaded Kuwait. His numerous accolades include the Lifetime Achievement Award for Journalism from Gawad Dangal Filipino Awards Men and Women for Integrity and Honor, as well as Outstanding Alumnus Award from the Colegio de San Juan de Letran and from Pamantasan ng Lungsod ng Maynila. Now it is my honor to present to you the alumnus of Colegio de San Juan de Letran and the Manila Times Chairman Emeritus, Dante Arevalo Ang Sr. Ordaa. The floor is yours, staff.
Thank you for the wonderful introduction. Empleyado ko kasi yan eh, kaya masyadong maganda ang kanyang mga sinabi. It is nice to be home. Ako'y nag-aral dito ng first 2 years sa liberal arts. And then transferred to LaSalle after a long hiatus. Kumalas ako sa LaSalle, hindi ako nakatapos uli because I found out LaSalle pala was the best school for ladies. Anyway, itong aking topic today is not a product of any research. I've decided to talk about this simply to provoke a national discussion. And so, Reverend Father Clarence Victor Marquez, ASEC, June Bernabe of the Department of Finance, Secretary General Ruben Pascual of the PCCI, and Dean E.J. Lopez. Good morning, and students, of course. Good morning, faculties and students. Why do the Filipinos remain poor? My thoughts. We are hailed in the world as bright, hardworking, loving, caring, and aspirational. We dream dreams. Our overseas workers are embraced by their employers for their loyalty and dedication to their jobs. Our immigrants are honored and feted by their new countries for their loyalty, compassion, and professionalism. Many of our leaders in the academe, business, and politics have studied in Ivy League schools in the United States and elsewhere. Our country is blessed with abundant natural and human resources. Yet, despite those attributes, corruption is endemic. Poverty stalks our land, and the Philippines remains a laggard in the world stage. Why? In many disciplines, we trail our neighbors in the delivery of health care services, the ease of doing business, education, poverty alleviation, fighting corruption, smuggling and illegal drugs, and dispensation of justice, among other pressing concerns. In the 1950s, the Philippines was second only to Japan. We were the envy of our neighboring countries. Students from foreign countries studied in our universities. We taught them agriculture, business, and the English language. Several decades later, we are at the bottom of the heap, ahead only of Myanmar, Laos, and Cambodia. Vietnam used to learn agriculture from our University of the Philippines in Los Baños. Now, the reverse is true. Filipino students are flocking to Vietnam to learn agriculture. In the 70s and 80s, Thailand and the Philippines were at par with each other economically with similar GDP levels and levels of growth. Some 2 decades later, Thailand leaped ahead of us, leaving us behind, biting the proverbial dust. More so with Singapore and Malaysia, and of course Indonesia. I ask, who should we blame for our poverty and misery? Is it our leaders in and out of government, our political system, culture, ourselves, or all of the above? I must confess I do not have the answers to our national problems, big and small. I will, however, offer some observations and cite a few examples. Corruption. National or local makes no difference. From the highest national offices to the lowly barangay, business transactions are attended by corruption. Records show that we lose 700 billion pesos annually to corruption. From the Bureau of Customs to the Department of Agriculture, smuggling activities are unstoppable. It is public knowledge that the authorities not only know the identities of the smugglers, but they are themselves complicit. Our public officials are part of the cabal, so the report goes. They form part of the corporation whose members change with each new administration. Our officials love to talk about protecting our farmers by stopping smuggling. They interdict some smuggled goods when there is too much heat. And when the heat dies down, smuggling goes on full swing once again. There was a recent incident where a high-ranking customs official had tried to intervene in the release of the smuggled onions in Subic, but he was rebuffed because the media had gotten wind of it and the goods were already confiscated by the authorities. Another example of big-time corruption involves the national ID. It is an excellent idea. It involves the printing of some 116 million IDs in digitally colored printing. The Philippine Statistics Authority is the primary implementing agency, yet it was the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas that undertook the bidding and not the PSA or the Philippine Statistics Authority, which is supposed to be the chief implementer. Why? But even before the IDs could be printed, several changes to the original TOR, or the Terms of Reference, were submitted to the government. The DOJ, in its legal opinion 28 series 2022, dated November 9, 2022, ruled that the proposed actions are legally infirm. Yet, despite the DOJ opinion, all CARD who won the bidding went ahead with the printing of the national IDs, only this time the cards are substandard. Instead of a full-color, digitally printed card, it is now printed on ordinary bond paper that can be downloaded, cut off, and laminated at your own expense. What could be more glaring than this? And yet, our honorable legislators say nothing, do nothing, and hear nothing. In other government offices, even the lowest ranking employees expect some kind of padulas before any transaction could proceed. Nobody complains. The public has grown tired of complaining. They have accepted corruption as a way of doing business. And so life goes on as if everything, including corruption, is okay. We are a God-fearing people, brought up by God-fearing parents, grew up in a God-fearing society, schooled in some of the best schools where values are taught. Yet, many of our leaders are corrupt in so many ways. Why? Let's talk political dynasty. It is enshrined in our Constitution. Yet our politicians mock our Constitution by refusing to enact a law that will define the meaning of political dynasty. Our learned politicians, in their defense of their immoral politics, say, "Let the people decide." But the people already decided when the draft 1987 Constitution was ratified in the 1987 referendum. Now, they want to amend the Constitution and do away with the term limits. Another problem, flawed electoral process. The COMELEC and the people know that the candidates' reported campaign expenses are fictitious and total lies. Yet nothing is done to change the protocol that allows the candidates to transgress the spirit of the law on campaign spending limits. In election after election, the COMELEC goes through the motion of accepting fake documents from candidates knowing fully well that the submissions are fake. Truth to tell, winners or losers, the candidates spend beyond what is allowed by law. We should just scrap the campaign spending limits and not waste time on a circus where everybody laughs at each time a candidate submits his campaign spending to the COMELEC. I am not blaming the COMELEC commissioners, but if they want to put sanity and integrity in our elections, maybe they should call on Congress to amend the law on campaign spending. Another elephant in the room is the so-called party list system. The party list system is best suited for a parliamentary government, not in a presidential form of government such as ours. They are supposed to give voice to the voiceless and empower the marginalized sectors of society. Yet in the Philippine setting, these party list representatives were co-opted or seized by the powerful political families. The party list representatives in Congress are composed of spouses, siblings, relatives of sitting senators, congressmen, governors, mayors, and billionaires. Another example, inefficient, predatory telcos. Many of our elementary students can barely read and write, according to some reports. In mathematics and science, they perform poorly. Why? Part of the answer is resources. Many children of poor families go to school hungry, while our public schools lack books, computers, and other educational tools. Our government talks of digitalization and of employing the internet for the delivery of lessons, but the internet services are miserable. They're too slow, inefficient, and quite expensive too. But not to worry, our telcos or our telco providers say that their internet speed is up to 120 BPS. And the users are supposed to be satisfied with that. The operative word is up to. They did not say the speed is 120 BPS, only up to. The only problem with the up to is that the actual internet speed most of the time is below 120 BPS and within the range of the so-called up to only. This is tantamount to fooling the people. There is such a thing as truth in advertising. The up to prefix is designed to hoodwink the users and to give the telco giants a legal cover in the event the consumers complain. Our internet is one of the slowest, inefficient, and most expensive in the world. In this globalized and digitized world, the internet has become a way of life in business, in schools, in our personal and social affairs. We have become dependent on the internet. It is our bridge to the world, to our loved ones, and to prosperity. Yet the giant telcos fail to deliver the service required of them, and the consumers are suffering for it. If this is not cheating, I do not know what is. Again, our legislators are see nothing, say nothing, and do nothing. Why? The answer is pretty simple and straightforward. Our legislators owe these telco companies. During elections, big business contributes to the campaign of the candidates. The more popular the candidate, the bigger the amount of contribution. And when they win, they simply go against or cannot go against the dictates of their patrons. In short, our legislators are regulatory captives of big business and of their own narrow interests. Many of our elected officials make politics their own backyard industry that stunts the growth and the development of our country, resulting in untold miseries for our people. Another problem is broken higher education. Our Commission on Higher Education, or CHED has commissioners or has 5 commissioners, including its chairman. The CHED commissioners chair more than 100 state colleges and universities. That means each commissioner chairs and attends monthly board meetings of more than 25 educational institutions. How in heaven's name could the individual commissioners regulate more than 25 state universities and at the same time do their jobs at the CHED or head office with efficiency? More than that, CHED is of the mistaken notion that it is within its mandate to interfere with the internal affairs of the colleges and universities, both public and private. It inserts itself in the management and operations of the school, involving even small matters that are clearly the responsibility of the institution. Quality education is expensive. If we want quality education, we must invest in faculty training, quality facilities, and equipment. 2 more examples why CHED is the stumbling block to quality education. There's a medicine program called Intramed. Intramed is an abbreviated 6-year medicine program. It is offered by UP. It is an excellent program. My question is, why cannot CHED open Intramed to all medical schools? Why cannot CHED promote and encourage our medical schools to offer Intramed instead of the usual 8-year medicine program? Here's another laughable CHED policy. Only those programs listed in its CMO or Commission Memorandum Order can be offered. That means even if your program is relevant or globally relevant, if your new program is not included in the CMO, you can forget it. Just one example. Some 15 or so years ago, a college had proposed to offer sports management and digital forensics. Both were denied by CHED because these 2 programs were not included in the list of programs in the CMO. But if your school is autonomous, you can offer even the most ridiculous program you could think of. And that is another problem. Why penalize the college that is not autonomous for its initiative and creativity? And why is there a divide between an autonomous and not autonomous college. If government were serious in quality education, it should consider looking into the law that created CHED and how the commissioners interpret the law. CHED is an albatross around the necks of the public and private educational institutions. Unless CHED recognizes the primacy of academic freedom, the quality of our education will deteriorate even further. For starters, CHED should free the schools from its stranglehold and allow them to practice academic freedom, which means allowing the schools to decide what to teach, who to teach, and how to teach. The question is, can the CHED commissioners let go of their intoxicating powers? And two more very big problems. There's too much politics in our country. In the years that followed, since the late President Ferdinand Ederlin Marcos had introduced both the barangay and the KB elections in 1982, the quality of local governance and delivery of public services had gone to the dogs, so to speak. Corruption became endemic. The ease of doing business at the local and national levels became more circuitous and expensive. Many of our barangay officials reportedly act as petty tyrants, fueling political tensions and contributing in no small measure to the widening of political divide. The Kabataang barangay elections is yet another example of the Filipinos' penchant with elections. We are the only country in the world that teach politics to our youths at an early age. Instead of exposing them to politics, we should teach them mathematics, business and finance, science and other progressive relevant programs that will help them succeed in life. The barangay and KB elections are supposed to be non-partisans. Yet, candidates running for office are barred from affiliating with or joining any political party. But the reality is the candidates are running with either the opposition or administration party. They are barefaced partisans. The barangay and Kabataang barangay elections are highly partisans, marked by dirty, divisive politics. Both are driven by money. Why don't we just scrap the barangay and barangay Kabataan elections and funnel the money instead to education, healthcare, or housing? Instead of electing our barangay officials, maybe we should just allow a committee of elders to appoint them. As for the barangay Kabataan or Kabataang barangay, let's just abolish it altogether and have our kabataan spend more time in school, in reading books, learning computers, business and livelihood, rather than exposing them to unbridled corruption and other shenanigans in government at an early age. In theory, we elect our leaders because we believe in them. This is another problem. The so-called utang na loob. We elect them, or our leaders, because we believe in them, in their competence, in their sincerity, and in their promise that they will lift us from poverty and lead the Filipino to prosperity, like a good life, a peaceful neighborhood, a good education, a good job, among other parental concerns. But once elected, they become captives of big business and parishioners of their own vanity. The framers of our 1987 Constitution have wisely put a cap on the number of years our president can serve, 6 years without re-election. The intention of that provision was very clear. It was meant primarily to shield the president from partisan politics and to detoxify our country from oftentimes ruinous politics. The 6-year no re-election provision will also allow the sitting president to exercise political will and to govern without distractions from the importunings of his supporters, campaign contributors, political allies, and the Johnny-come-lately. He can focus on the issues that bedevil the country: corruption, red tape, smuggling, inflation, poverty, employment, underemployment, foreign investments, and a host of heartbreaking, wrenching issues. He would not have to worry about his re-election nor engage in partisan politics. After all, he is supposed to build the nation and write history. A president not running for re-election can unite the country and govern as a statesman, picking the best and the brightest from the ranks of his supporters and detractors alike. He could wield these powers to tear down the walls that divide our people by leading by example and committing himself to the spirit of the Constitution, by elevating himself above the cloud of partisan politics. As a statesman, the president can make decisions based on what our country and people need and not on what is popular. He should be less concerned about his public relations or popularity ratings and concentrate instead on what the country and the people need to prosper. In summary, he should summon his courage to resist the pull of partisanship and the lure of personal vanity. President Bongbong Marcos must seize the moment. He should not waste his precious political capital on so-called big projects with nice sound bites like the Maharlika Sovereign Wealth Fund. He should eschew governance by PR and catchy sound bites or sloganeering. He may have missed some precious moments since he came into office on June 30 or noon of June 30. 7 months have come or had come and passed, and some opportunities may have been lost. But it is not too late. He can still catch up, but only if President Marcos puts his heart and mind into it. It is time to get serious. It is time to buckle down to work. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the interesting political insights, Chairman Emeritus Dante Arevalo ang Sr.
And now we have the second round of our open forum. So on stage we have Sir Da and Ray Lugtu. And I believe for this round of our open forum we'll have 2 questions from Ray and 3
three
questions
from the audience.
From the audience.
For those who wish to ask their questions, please come to the microphone already and prepare for your...
Yes, so this is truly an eye-opener to most. No? So Dr. Ang, no, this has been a problem, a pressing problem, and thank you for bringing all of these issues into light. Now, my question is, you addressed this to President Bongbong Marcos. No? So where can he start? No? In what areas can he start right now?
Okay, I'm not trying to address anything to the president, just to be clear. I'm just airing my observations in the hope of provoking a discussion.
All right.
So I'm not trying to suggest anything to the president. I don't think I'm too low in the ladder to be able to suggest anything to the president. So I'm just a simple citizen and trying to air his grievances and some thoughts publicly, especially. I'd like to address this to the students so that they could be more they could practice what I call critical thinking.
Okay.
So they should not just take anything what the politicians say. No, they should start questioning the politicians for every word and for every deed, because that's the only way we could help this country, by practicing our critical thinking and start questioning our politicians.
All right. So I'm hearing it starts with us, with the students, becoming critical thinkers.
It's all up to us, actually. The problems are so myriad, so many. It actually, you see the Philippines where we are. Vietnam has already overtaken us. And Laos, if we don't wake up, within the next couple of years, will also overtake us. So the point being is there something wrong somewhere? We keep on hearing nice and beautiful statements, nice and beautiful press releases from our government, from our leaders. But is there something wrong somewhere? Why, if the press releases are very, very nice, is there something wrong? Why are we in our sad state? Why are we still poor? Because that is a question that bothers a lot of Filipinos. The trek to, or the OFWs, the number of people or young people going abroad seeking jobs in Saudi Arabia, in the Middle East, is alarming. It's no joke. Recently, there's another domestic helper murdered in Kuwait. What can we do? The ideal situation is really to stop sending domestic helpers to the Middle East. Because, number one, it is so, there's a word for that. They are professionals. Many of our OFWs are professionals, teachers, nurses, and all that. And yet they find work in the Middle East, taking care of what? The laundry, cleaning of the house, taking care of the babies and the children of their bosses. No? So the problem really is very serious. So I don't know. I don't have the answers to the problems. No, but because if you stop naman sending the OFWs to the Middle East, what will happen is that our unemployment will balloon. And if the number of unemployment balloons, it's very possible that there might be a revolution. You couple the unemployment level of unemployment with inflation and lack of food or food supply, that's a prescription for revolution. That is why we have to still send our OFWs to the Middle East, but there must be a program. The government must think of a program to somehow reduce the number of OFWs being sent to overseas by opening more local opportunities. But can we do that? We need foreign investments. We need money. Again, how do we do that? How can we do that? There is so much corruption in the country that the money intended for housing, for medical care, is being eaten up by the corrupt. And the money goes to the pockets of the corrupt. So, ang daming problema.
Yes. All right, so we'll let our audience ask the question. So identify yourself and you can ask your question.
Hello po, I'm Julian Buchwani po from The Lands, the school publication. You've spoken a lot about corruption in your messages, in your speech, and you've quite emphasized that our country is around billions, hundreds of billions of pesos go to corruption. Pero let's pinpoint muna what had happened in recent years. Now, Rizal is famous for quoting that the youth is the hope of the motherland. Yet last elections, the youth made up most of those that voted. And in fact, I think we can go back to the presentations of the PCCI and the Department of Finance. 15 to 24 years old is ika nga the golden range. No? And so, the youth has a lot of power in this country. However, our education, especially in this country, is shadowed by corrupt acts and people whose power has overreached into places that shouldn't be. In your opinion, what should we, the youth, do in order to finally value facts, to finally value the truth, and instead of going to influencers and believing in lies?
That's another problem. The proliferation of social media is another problem. You have to draw a distinction between social media and the regular media. Or, for example, yung mga bloggers, no, against newspapers and television stations and radio stations, no. The bloggers, they just blog kung anong sinasabi niyan, and wala namang verification yan. So in other words, maraming kung ano lang maisip, free for all eh. In contrast, dito sa newspapers, ang mga radio stations and television, siyempre, yan, bine-verify yan, chine-check yan, the accuracy of the statements, of the accusations. Yeah, so, and yet, we cannot stop my social media from performing its task, no? Diba? Nandiyan na yan. And people go to social media for entertainment, for so many things, no? Marami. So again, to the question, paano nating, pa nating naawat yung...
Saan tayo pupunta?
Saan tayo pupunta? Oh. The question actually was medyo malalim din ang tanong. No? So, it starts with our leaders. You know? Kaya nga, I said yung 6-year no re-election for the president is very critical because once a president is elected, dapat yan, he should act as president of all Filipinos, whether detractors or supporters alike. Dapat ang presidente above politics na. No? The first order of the day for a non-partisan president or for the president is to be non-partisan. And to be able to be non-partisan, to demonstrate his being non-partisan, he should be able to pick the best and the brightest sa lahat ng bayan natin, including from the ranks of the opposition. So it starts with the president. Now, corruption. It also starts from sa taas. So, kailangan kasi our leaders must lead by example. Another problem yan is yung ang election campaign natin. Our legislators, they go to the big business to seek donations for the campaign. And what do you expect? Pag nanalo na yan, siyempre, hindi na kikibuyan. Kung may diferensya, ang kanilang kliyente, nabigyan sila ng pera, wala na. Hindi na kikilos. So, kanadulan. Again, ang hindi ko lang binanggit dito, yung ating kasing mga foreign or trade policies are too restrictive. Masyadong marami tayong protectionist na laws. No? Now, I have been telling some people in government that maybe you should review the Kedan system doon sa sugar lang natin. Our Kedan system, may quota ka before you could use or import sugar into the country, mag-a-apply ka ng quota sa Sugar Regulatory Agency. But you have to be a trader to be able to apply for a quota. And how do you apply? Naku, ang papeles, ang katutak. No? Ang hirap. Now, why is there a quota before you could import? The problem is the government is trying to protect the interests of our sugar millers. For example, sa Thailand, ang sugar costs only 25 pesos per kilo. Sa atin, ang sugar costs magkano? 70, 80 pesos per kilo. Why? Why does the government continue to subsidize our retarded industry. Why doesn't the government allow our industries to compete in the global market? Diba? Pagandahin na nila yung equipment nila, machineries nila, i-modernize nila. No, that's the only way to compete. Now, why penalize the consumers for the incompetence of our sugar millers? O yan, pinoproteksyon na natin. How many thousand lang yan? Thousands lang yung sugar millers yan, even the sugar farmers. What the government should do is to scrap this protectionist policy, allow the free importation, i-tax mo na lang. Pag nag-tax, if you tax the importation, yung revenue sa taxes, ibigay mo sa sugar farmers now. That's one way of helping the sugar farmers. But unfortunately, so, ang daming problema ng government. So, I don't know. I cannot really give you a specific answer what to do.
Alright. So, meron pa tayong next question?
Yes,
Yeah?
next question, please.
Hello, I'm MJ. I'm also from The Lands, the school publication. First of all, I would like to commend your speech. I think it's very enlightening and it's something that we need to repeat a couple of times for us to actually realize it. Because again, na-normalize na nga yung corruption, na-normalize na natin yung incompetence and kawalan ng excellence. Pati sa mababa na I mean, to the grassroots, ina-accept lang natin. So my question is, I'm one of the 800,000 people that will graduate this year. And I'm actually perplexed because when I try to look for advice, for instance, the government said the way to development is through the PDP. But a lot of these plans are actually contrasting. For instance, one contrasting thing is sustainability versus infrastructure. One infrastructure that the government plans to continue is the PAREX, which is, again, when we look at it sustainability-wise, it doesn't add any value and might even harm the developments that we already had in the Pasig River. Another contrasting idea is easing corporate tax to small and medium enterprises, but also extending ownership or full ownership to foreign corporations, especially when it comes to renewable energies. So for me, I'm a bit perplexed as to what the role of the youth will be, or the young people, the engines of growth will be. Will we be OFW, seafarers? Will we be champions of sustainability? Will we start MSEs? Or will we be workers of foreign corporation? Because the development plan for me is a bit perplexed, but at the same time, it does not actually answer the role of the Filipino youth in our development.
It's really a very big issue, totoo lang. And I have no ready answer to that, no. But let me just give you some examples, no. Our country has so many laws, ang daming batas, yet hindi ini-implement. I'll give you let's talk small time, small issues lang. For example, there is such a law as yung seat belt law, di ba? But tignan mo ang jeepney drivers natin, nagsi-seat belt ba yan? Di ba? Ayan, tignan mo. Ang daming batas nice. Pero laging kulang. May batas, pero may kulang lagi. Another example, yung iodized salt law that killed our salt industry, pinatay niyan, because ang matatalino nating congressman at senators, ang ginawa nila, they came up with the law mandating that our sugar production should contain iodine. Ang ganda, perfect, beautiful on paper. Pero, paano naman natin magkakaroon ng iodine? Wala namang production ng iodine dito sa Pilipinas. Wala namang factory. So, yung mga poor salt manufacturers, mga farmers na yan, anong ginawa nila? Wala naman silang, sabi, saan kami kukuha ng iodine? Wala namang factory dito. No, the government naman has not provided us with the supply of iodine and where to buy and how. In other words, maganda ang patakaran, pero walang support. No? In other words, isa pa, ito, very small item, bawal magsakay, bawal magbaba, bawal bumaba, magsakay. Yet, sa bumaba ang mga tao natin, diyan, dito, sa ito. Kung saan bawal, di ba? So again, pero pagdating sa Subic, pag sinabing dito, dito lang. Pero sa Amerika, pag sinabing bawal, bawal. Bakit pagdating sa atin dito, hindi tayo makasunod? Why, bakit? So siguro ano yan, lack of enforcement. Kung makikita talaga ng tao natin dito na ini-enforce yan, baka titino yan. Pero, again, small time, paano i-enforce? Karamihan ng pulis natin, saka yung mga traffic guys natin, officials natin, nag-aabang lang ng violators, o kaya kung walang mahuling violators, they come up with some ridiculous violations para makahingi ng nalagay doon si driver. So, ang daming problema ng bayan natin. I am not trying to be pessimistic, no? I am sure there is a bright side of things. Pero yung bright side of things na yan, the youth is part of the bright side of things na yan. Kayo, mga kabataan, you have to start electing good, honest, competent leaders. Huwag kayong maniwala sa mga propaganda during the campaign. It starts with us. No. Why did I say that? Ako dati akong PR practitioner. Alam ko naman how to spin an issue. But ang ayaw ko lang, yung nagsisinungaling ka na sa tao. Unfortunately, many, if not all of our politicians who run for public office, ang ginagawa nila talagang outright panluloko na eh. So, again, ang masakit nito, naluloko tayo. So, my request to the youth, start practicing your critical thinking. Start asking questions. Because the only way to find the truth is to start asking questions. If you don't ask questions, malalaglag tayong lahat sa bangin. Ngayon, tignan nyo nangyari. I supported the president, by the way. Sabi ko lang, baka naman yung second Marcos will be a better one. I hope he's better. He has naman 5.5 years pa to prove himself. I hope he succeeds. But look at the other politicians. Tignan nyo. Look at the kind of people we elected in the Senate. Marami dyan, chairman ng Komite de Silencio na wala namang ginagawa. Let's not name names, But the fact is, kung tayo ginagamit natin ang ating power of the pen, o power of decision, power of yung ating election na yan, power to elect our leaders, half the problems will be resolved. It won't go away totally. Maybe half if we start electing the right people. Huwag kayong maniwala, baka Diyos ako, ako'y makabayan. Pagdating naman sa lagay, ang dami. So, there is a joke nga sa alam naman nyo ito, no? I'm sure you know about this joke. That doon daw sa China, sa Indonesia, under the table. Sa China daw, over the table ang lagayan. Sa Philippines daw, including the table. Can you imagine, ito yung umiikot na joke. That's true, This corruption thing is no joke. I have experienced it personally. Ang people in government now really expect that you give something to them. Even for small matters. Naging regular na naging part of our culture. So we have to disturb the culture. We have to change our culture. Baguhin natin yan. But where and how do we start? Well, we start with the youth, the mga kabataan, and we start asking questions, asking ourselves, asking the politicians. Use your critical thinking. That's how and where we start.
All right, so critical thinking.
We have our last critical question from the audience.
Okay, good morning. I'm Dominic Enriquez-Salit from the Political Science program. And I will be asking about one of the controversial issue for the past months in our country. At least it concerns our economic and as well the politics now. This is about the Maharlika Sovereign Wealth Fund. No? And you already mentioned, sir, about it. And gusto ko lang malaman kung ano yung naging stand niyo about it, and at the same time, as a previous PR practitioner, how do you think paano siya naka-apekto sa legacy ng current president po natin?
Yung Maharlika Fund muna, let's go into some specifics, no? For my understanding, these mga sovereign wealth funds are sourced from the surplus. Pag may surplus ka, yung natitira na, hindi mo kailangan na sobra, ilalagay mo sa surplus. Yung surplus, ilalagay mo sa sovereign fund. Yung sovereign fund na yun, yun ang i-invest mo. Ang tanong ko, meron bang surplus ang Pilipinas? Deficit nga tayo eh. Di ba? Nangungutang nga tayo eh, para tayo maka-abante sa ating buhay eh. So, wala tayong surplus. Secondly, even among the proponents of the Maharlika Bill, sila hindi magkasundo eh. In the beginning, kasama ang yung SSS, GSIS, tapos suddenly, nung nagkaroon ng public outcry, tinanggal nila yon. Second, sabi nila, yun na lang daw revenues ng GOCC. O ngayon, binago na naman yata nila ngayon. So sila hindi nila makasundo eh. Anong sabihin ng lahat ng yan? Maharlika, it was just an idea brought up by somebody, probably by somebody in Malacanang, magandang pakinggan, so the president must have fallen for it, unfortunately. Hanggang ngayon, hindi pa nila malaman kung anong talagang nung nature ng Maharlika Sovereign Wealth Fund yan. Sila di ba kasundo eh. So, yung Maharlika Wealth Fund, wala yan. They should forget about it. In other words, kung pera ng Pilipino, halimbawa, susubo mo na lang, bibili mo ng pagkain sa nagugutom, o bibili mo ng gamot sa may sakit, sasabihin mo sa kanya, hindi ko muna bibili ng gamot yan, tsaka hindi ko muna bibili ng pagkain yan. I-invest muna natin yan, ha? Ganon literally ang mangyayari dyan. Yung ibibigay na pera dapat na subsidy sa ating mga nagugutom, sa ating mga may sakit, sa ating mga housing na yan, sa ating mga eskwela, babawasan mo ngayon yan, ilalagay mo sa Sovereign Wealth Fund. Di ba masama naman yun? Of course, hindi naman sinasabi ni Presidente yung ganon. But in effect, baka ganon ang mangyari. So mabuti na lang, it's a good thing. Sa ngayon, hindi pinag-uusapan ng Sovereign Wealth Fund. I know, baka naman pinag-uusapan pa rin, but hindi ko alam. But sana, kalimutan na nila yan. It's not for the Filipinos and not for the Philippines. Hindi tayo, ready for that. Ang Norway lost several billions. Singapore lost several millions. Katay ba? Because Sovereign Wealth Fund yan, invest mo, may talo-panalo yan. Hindi ba? Anyway, we're not ready for it. So what's the question?
What's the impact of the legacy?
Yung legacy ni Presidente, if he could just be a non-partisan president and start acting like a president for all, that means getting and hiring people in his cabinet, for the cabinet. People coming from the administration and the administration alike, the opposition alike. Then he becomes truly a statesman. Now to your question, anong legacy niya? The legacy of the president, if I were to advise the president, that he should act like a statesman, above petty politics. Sa ngayon, ang nakikita lang natin, na-appoint sa gobyerno, puro mga kakampi nila. Paano pa tayo magkakaisa? The country needs to unite. There has been so much division in our country for the past several decades, and that is one of the primary reasons why our country cannot move forward. Masyado tayong divided as a people, divided as a nation. It's time to unite. And by the way, yan ang pinanalo ni Presidente, unity. Now, again, to your question, ano bang legacy niya? Maybe, kung ma-unite niya ang Pilipino, yan ang kanyang legacy.
Thank you for your political insights, Chairman Emeritus Ang.
Once again, thank you, and please remain on stage as we award the plaque of appreciation to our speaker, Sir Da, and Sir Ray, please remain on stage also for the photo ops. At this point, by the way, the fourth, let's acknowledge the presence of Associate Professor Cristina M. Castro Cabral, the Vice President for Academic Affairs. So once again, may we call on Reverend Father Clarence Victor C. Marquez, Father Jose, Dr. Cabral, Dean EJ, and Sir Klink for the awarding of plaques.
And I think, Joy, it would be good if we were to share with the audience the citation on the plaque.
Yes, it's going to be my honor. A plaque of appreciation is presented to Dr. Dante A. Ang, Chairman Emeritus, The Manila Times, is hereby recognized for his exemplary contribution as resource person in the 5th Annual Academic and Political Briefing held at Colegio de San Juan de Letran, Intramuros, Manila, given this 31st day of January in the day of our Lord, 2023. Signed, Reverend Father Clarence Victor C. Marquez, OP, Rector and President.
Thank you also, Father Marquez, VPAA Cabral, Dean Lopez, and Sir Klink for once again doing the honors of the awarding.
Thank you also, Ray, for being a very, very good moderator. Thank you, Father Jose.
And I think, Joy, you will be inviting a special person to be giving the closing remarks.
Yes. So to officially end our program for today, may I call on Reverend Father Clarence C. Marquez, OP, Rector and President, Colegio de San Juan de Letran, Manila and Bataan.
To the members of my Dominican community here, my fellow academic and administrative officials of the Colegio, I would like to especially mention Associate Professor Emmanuel J. Lopez, PhD, Dean of the Letran Graduate School, our partners in this endeavor, the Manila Times, headed by our distinguished Letran alumni, Dr. Dante Ang, Chairman Emeritus, and Mr. Dante Klink Ang, Chief Executive Officer. Our distinguished speakers, Assistant Secretary June Bernabe from the Department of Finance, Mr. Ruben Pascual, Secretary General of the Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry, of course, Dr. Dante Ang, guests from the different participating institutions and companies, including those joining us virtually, students, especially of the graduate school, teachers, employees, ladies and gentlemen, sisters and brothers, magandang tanghali po sa inyong lahat. I am not an economist, nor a politician. I only teach the Bible. Interestingly, in the Gospels, the close circle of the disciples of the Lord Jesus included some persons who may be considered as experts in politics and economics. There was Simon the Zealot. There was Matthew, the former tax collector. And of course, there was Judas Iscariot, the designated treasurer of the group. So we have a former subversive, a public sinner, and the betrayer of the Lord as apostolic patrons of the fields of politics and economics. All of them are unworthy, all of them chosen by the Lord, by God's mysterious design. Nonetheless, all of us, priests and lay, ladies and gentlemen, rich and poor, whether we are conscious or not, consenting or not, we are all affected by politics and economics. True to the Coleo's motto, always already, we recognize God, Deus, who is the first and final cause of our living, our moving, our being, holding our past, present, and future, encompassing our personal and collective life, including our political and economic endeavors. Likewise, this annual briefing provides an academic setting for the presentation and discussion of the present state and future prospect of the political and economic vista of Las Islas de Filipinas, our beloved country, our patria. Thirdly, Letran, with more than 402 years of blessed existence, has been the second home to generations of saints, martyrs, heroes, patriots, politicians, leaders of industry, who have contributed significantly to our history. Today's event is a furtherance of that noble advocacy, pointing not self-referentially to Letran, but to the broader context of modern Philippine society, inviting experts and personalities who exemplify excellence and steadfastness in the field of economics and politics, offering a safe and sincere space for an exchange of ideas, for dialogue and discernment about what the future holds for all of us. On behalf of Letran, I would like to express our heartfelt gratitude to all our participants, our resource persons, our partners, especially the Manila Times, in making this fifth political and economic briefing a successful reality, an inspired prophesying about what becomes beyond the horizon, a vision of the future which we hope to share. Let us continue on this journey towards economic growth, this pilgrimage of our faith life, working together, earning and gaining, fulfilling our dreams and aspirations, becoming truly happy under the light of God's grace. Arriba Economia y Politica, Arriba Letran. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you, Father Rector. At this point, please rise as we sing the Letran hymn.
Dinala si Quezon sa Maynila at sa gayoy makapag-aral siya sa Kolehiyo de San Juan de Letran.
Ng 75 season ng NCAA.
Where is the team of Colegio de San Juan de Letran?
Students of Colegio de San Juan de Letran bagged top honors.
Kampiyon ng Letran.
Sa endgame kaya panalo ang Letran.
Back as a miss from the Ant-Man Mark Cruz.
Alma mater Letran es vivente, Rome
a través de su augusto destino, de esperanza serás rosicler, pues lograste según tu modelo tantos hombres ilustres formar, que semejan estrellas del cielo en la noche serena al brillar.
Come soles tu gloria sin fin, y perfuman los labios también, come salas paloma el desvío, orgullosos de tu historia, nuestras almas te saludarán. Por tu honor demos glorias, y ahora santidad te
This has been the Colegio de San Juan de Letran and the Manila Times 5th Economic and Political Briefing titled Arriba Economia y Politica, Gradual Rising in Approval. Have a great day ahead. Thank you very much.
Sign up for a year and pay less than 71 pesos per month. Visit tmt.ph/digital to get your free 30 days of the Manila Times Digital Edition. Sign up for a year and pay less than 71 pesos per month. Visit tmt.ph/digital to get your free 30 days of the Manila Times Digital Edition. Sign up for a year and pay less than 71 pesos per month. Visit tmt.ph/digital to get your free 30 days of the Manila Times Digital Edition.
This is Colegio de San Juan de Letran, a place rich in history, a cradle of excellence, the home of Letranites. This is where you experience innovation, top quality technology, boost your creativity, expand your imagination, experience professional learning, discover new things, strive for greatness, meet new friends. Come and experience Letran Senior High. We offer HUMS Integrated Accountancy, Business and Management Strand, Science, Technology, Engineering, and Mathematics, as well as Home Economics and Information and Communication Technology. In Letran Senior High, students are given the chance to explore their talents and live an engaging student life. They are prepared to conquer challenges and witness victories. Be part of something extraordinary. Whatever you want to be in the future, whatever road you take, we will help you get there. Choose happiness. Choose excellence. Choose a better future. Choose Letran. Your journey starts here.